I was absolutely devastated when I found out my wife had been cheating on me while I was away on business. To make matters worse, she was still cheating on me. When I returned home, I had no idea what to do or where to turn for 10 years. Our marriage was rock solid. We never fought, we never even argued. It was perfect. And then one day it felt like it all fell apart. It happened. So suddenly I still can't believe it. One minute we were happy and in love, and the next we were getting divorced. All I know is that our marriage just wasn't as strong as I thought it was. And now I'm left feeling angry and betrayed. I trusted my wife implicitly and she let me down. I thought our marriage was unshakable, but it turns out it was nothing more than an illusion. I started noticing little cracks in our marriage a few months ago. It was nothing serious at first. Just the occasional disagreement over something trivial. However, lately, the cracks have been getting bigger and more frequent. We quarrel over things that we used to agree on, and we often go to bed angry with each other. I don't know what happened, but something has definitely changed. I tried to talk to my wife and spice things up, but she just wasn't having it. She said she was too tired, that she had a headache, that she just wanted to watch TV, or some other excuse. But I know what she really meant was that she didn't want to talk to me, that she'd rather zone out in front of the television than have a conversation with her own husband. No matter what I did, I couldn't win back my wife's affection. I tried buying her flowers, cooking her dinner, and even tried taking her on vacation. Nothing worked. It was like she had someone else in her life that she loved more than me. I began to wonder if she was having an affair. I asked her about it, but she denied it. I never really paid much attention to my wife's phone habits. I figured she was just like me and only used her phone for occasional calls and text. However, recently I've started to notice her acting really suspicious with her phone. She's always looking at it when I'm not around, and she's quick to put it away. If I enter the room, she's always seemed to be spending more time on social media, and she's frequently receiving calls and texts late at night. I've started to suspect that my wife is up to something after witnessing her behavior with her phone. She's been acting strange and she's been very distant. Dead bedroom has set in. I tried to ask her what's wrong, but she just brushes me off and says that she's fine. I don't want to accuse her of anything without proof, but I also can't just let it go. I had been wondering for weeks what my wife was up to. She was always on her phone, not wanting to do anything with me, but she would go out with her friends, and she continued to be secretive about her phone calls and text messages. Fast forward a few days, and I made the decision on the way to work to hire a private investigator. I didn't have the time to keep wondering what my wife was up to. Within a few days, the investigator had given me a report that confirmed my worst fears. My wife was cheating on me, and get this. She would have this man come to our house and pick her up while I was at work. So after he told me this, I pondered the idea of installing cameras, but there was no need because the only thing that happened at my house was he would come to pick her up. He would sit in the car and wait, then my wife would come out and they would leave. I gave the private investigator explicit instructions to get as much footage as possible. He followed her for 1 week and captured everything on video. I was shocked when I saw the footage of her kissing another man. She had told me that she was hanging out with friends, but it was clear that she wasn't hanging out with friends. Now that I had footage of my wife cheating on me, my next step was to contact an attorney to see what my options were here in the state of New Jersey, which is an at-fault state for divorce. My lawyer explained that I would likely be able to use the footage as evidence in court, and that this would probably result in a more favorable divorce settlement for me. Additionally, my lawyer suggested that I filed for divorce as soon as possible, as the longer I waited, the more likely it would be that my wife could claim that the footage was not relevant to our marriage. Ultimately, I decided to follow my lawyer's advice and I filed for divorce shortly thereafter. The good thing about this upcoming divorce: we don't have any kids in this marriage. She has 2 daughters from a previous marriage. Yeah, she was married for 3 years before and had 2 kids in 3 years is kind of a relief. To be honest, I'm glad we didn't have any kids together. It would have just made the divorce that much more complicated. So in a way, I guess you could say that her having kids from a previous marriage is a good thing. It's one less thing for us to worry about. I am in my late 30s and so is my soon-to-be ex-wife. As the days go by after filing for divorce, my wife is still claiming she is going out with her friends. I still have the private investigator follow her and he will continue to follow her until she is served with divorce papers. At this point, my feelings for my wife had all but dissipated. I am just trying to make sure I have a strong case for my divorce. I was returning from my business trip when I got the angriest phone call from my wife. She had just been served with the divorce papers and she wanted to know why I had filed for divorce. I told her that she would find out in court why I had filed. But I could see that she was already upset when I finally walked in the door from my business trip. My wife accosted me and demanded to know again why I had filed for divorce, not wanting to get into a fight. I again told her that she would find out everything at the divorce hearing. However, she was not content with this answer and insisted that I tell her what happened. Reluctantly, I explained that I had caught her cheating on me and that I had decided to end our marriage as a result. I told her that I don't want to try anymore. I can't do this anymore. You destroyed our marriage. I have been trying to be a good husband for 10 years and I am done. My wife started to cry, beg and plead for another chance. But I told her I didn't want to. She told me she would change. She would do anything I wanted, she would get help. She would go to counseling. But I said it was too late. I told her that the betrayal is too much for me to overlook and there was nothing she could do to change that. She pleaded with me to stay. But I told her it was over and left the house while I was driving. She was pleading with me to come home, crying and saying everything under the sun. She even brought up marriage counseling again. I told her to stop and that I was not going to change my mind. Then all hell broke loose. She started calling me every name in the book and accused me of being a terrible husband. She said I was never there for her and that she was done putting up with my crap. I told her she was being ridiculous and that she was just upset because I had made the decision to file for divorce. We argued back and forth until finally I had enough and hung up on her. That's why after I hung up on my soon-to-be ex-wife, I went to a hotel. I didn't have anywhere else to go. My parents live in another state and most of my friends live hours away and I didn't feel like driving that far. So I left the marital home and got a hotel room, which will probably be my home for a bit. I am still in shock over everything that's happened. It all happened so fast. One minute we had a solid marriage or so I thought, and the next we are divorcing and I am a bad husband. Wow. As the divorce hearing inches closer, I find myself becoming more and more anxious. Although I have been the one pushing for the divorce, I can't help but feel a sense of dread at the thought of going through with it. My attorney asked me about our financial situation and I have to break the news to him that my wife doesn't work and I am the sole provider. He then asked me about the house and I tell him it is a rental. We sold our house a few years ago and we just never looked for a replacement. My attorney tells me it's probably a good idea that we don't own a house. Even though New Jersey is an at-fault state, the judge would probably make her sell the house to split the proceeds. He says you have been married for over 10 years. She doesn't have access to financial resources and you can't prove that she was using the money you gave her for her affair. The day of our divorce hearing was a shit show. Somehow she had an attorney and their attorney tried to get the evidence from the private investigator thrown out. I was never so angry in my life. The nerve of that woman. But my attorney told the judge that my private investigator compiled evidence up until my wife was served with divorce papers and showed the court that my wife was still cheating up until she was served. My attorney argued that since she was still cheating, the footage should be allowed and entered into evidence. The judge agreed. My wife was furious and vowed to get revenge before the divorce hearing concluded. My wife was given a choice: either stay in the house and continue to pay rent or move out. It's been 3 long months since my divorce was finalized. During that time, I've tried to keep my head up and focus on rebuilding my life. So you can imagine my surprise when a few of my coworkers came up to me and told me they seen my ex-wife working at a local department store. It had been almost 4 months since my divorce. And in that time I had barely left the house when I had to go to a local Best Buy. My ex-wife ran up behind me from the department store where she worked. She must have seen me from a window or something. I was completely taken off guard. She was crying and hugged me tightly, begging me to take her back. At first, I was tempted. After all, we had been married for over 10 years and I still had feelings for her. But then I remembered all the reasons why we had divorced in the first place. The main culprit was her cheating on me and disrespecting me. I gently pushed her away and continued to walk toward Best Buy. As the months went by, I learned that my ex-wife had been fired from her job after she was caught stealing. The company decided not to press charges and she ended up moving back home to Oklahoma. She ended up moving in with an old friend of hers who eventually kicked her out, and she ended up back home with her mom. I was surprised that she was able to get away with all of this, but I guess her mom was able to help her out in any case. It's been a few months since I've seen or heard from her. And I'm starting to feel like maybe she's finally out of my life for good. But thinking my ex-wife was out of my life for good was short-lived. She showed up at my door one day out of the blue, and I have to say I was shocked to see her. She said she wanted to talk, and I reluctantly let her in. She told me she had been going through a tough time and needed help against my better judgment. I helped her out financially afterwards. She started showing up more often and becoming more demanding. I soon realized that she hadn't changed one bit and that she was just using me. I finally told her that I can't support her. I am not her husband and she is no longer my responsibility. I also told her to stop coming to my house. Then she says she will always come to our home. At that moment, I realized that this woman is not going away. It sounded like she was going to be stalking me. After my encounter with my ex-wife, I went down to the courthouse and filed to get a restraining order against her. It was a hard decision to make, but I knew it was necessary to protect myself. The process was fairly straightforward and the restraining order was granted relatively quickly. In the meantime, I had to take measures to keep myself safe, such as changing my locks and installing a security system. It was an uneasy time. But fortunately, the restraining order was effective and my ex-wife stayed away. Looking back, I'm glad I made the decision to get a restraining order. It gave me a peace of mind and allowed me to move on with my life. It's been